Millie had a plan to pass her final, but it required a new iPhone. I should have studied, she thought to herself, knowing she traded her study time for drinking binges and casual teenage intimacy. Apart from retching into the toilet a few times and a couple of intimate moments that left her bruised and alone, the trade-off had been well worth it. And now it's time for Millie to pay the price. The bill is due. Millie expected she'd cram, but cracking the book now seemed more difficult than she imagined. After spending a few hours attempting to seriously understand the material, she realised a passing grade was going to be unlikely. So Minnie's plan was to cheat. After some internet research, she found a product that would work perfectly for this particular test scenario. This special app she found, called Whispers, worked in conjunction with a very small, in-the-ear Bluetooth receiver. Simply by tapping a little button on the outside of the earbud, she would be able to scroll through her own pre-recorded audio notes one by one until she found the required information. At the end, the audio notes start over. Leaning on one's head is a default position for most students, so it was foolproof. As long as she could make sure her phone was switched on when she put it in the communal cell phone jail at the entrance to the testing hall, she'd make full use of it. But Millie had a problem. The app would only work with the most recent iPhone, and hers was an iPhone 8. She ordered the Whispers app and opted for overnight shipping so she'd get the item in the morning. Millie planned to spend the next few days loading the device with audio notes from her textbook. But what about the phone? She didn't have the money for a new iPhone, particularly the newest version. What about her dad? Would he pay for a new one? Dad wasn't wealthy. He worked a blue-collar job. Much of her college costs were covered by a healthy volleyball scholarship, so her dad only paid for her cafeteria account and some books. So Millie thought about the ask. What would sell him on buying her the newest phone? Outside in the crisp Boston air, Millie's friend Priya met her at Priya's SUV in the parking lot. "You want me to do what?" Priya said. "Just run over my phone with your car." "What the hell for?" Millie carefully explained her plan to Priya and got her to agree to driving over her phone and shutting up about it afterwards. Placing the phone behind Priya's back tyre, Millie took a big breath. "Okay, do it." Priya drove over the phone 3 times, destroying its screen and slightly expanding the shell so that its insides could be seen. It was a sad and charged moment. "Christ, Millie, I hope this works." "Me too. Can I borrow your phone?" Millie asked. Millie's dad, Fred's phone dinged. Taking a moment from checking a car's braking system on the garage lift, Millie's dad saw he had a text message from Millie. Using a red mechanic's rag, he wiped 3,000-mile oil and grit from his fingers and stabbed at the balloon icon. A photo appeared in the text box of a destroyed cell phone. "Oh, Millie, Jesus," he said to himself. His phone then rang from an unknown number, but he had a hunch who it was. "Millie, what happened?" "Oh, Dad, my cell phone got run over by a car. What am I going to do?" Fred thought about it for a moment. "Maybe we can upgrade. I'll call the phone company and see what they have." "Thanks, Dad. Perfect. I'd like to get the iPhone 10. "How much is it?" "I'm not sure. Maybe around $1,000. "Millie, we can't afford that." "Dad, I've got to have that model. It has features I need for school. It's my one piece of tech that has to be new." Fred heard himself sigh. He was well aware Millie usually isn't demanding, but this was too much. "I'm sorry, Millie, I can't do the new one. I can probably replace the 8, but I just can't choke up that kind of cash for a phone." "Dad, I need this. We need to make it work. I need it by Friday." "Millie, please stop the hysterics. The only thing you need to do is what you do best. Ace your tests and win games. You do both, and we'll see about the new phone over Christmas break. I'm sorry." Millie hung up the phone. Priya looked at her hard. "Oh, Millie, I'm so sorry it didn't work." Millie shook her head in disbelief. What a shame, killed a perfectly good phone too. A shocked Millie decided to go for a drive outside Boston. Her red sedan with the crumpled rear passenger fender and yellowed headlights rattled her towards nowhere as she tried to calculate all of the fallout from her blonde tornado. Oh, what was I thinking? I'm going to lose my scholarship. While she was driving, the white dashed lines led her into the nearby township of Quincy. Millie pulled into a skating rink parking lot. She made the car safe and just sat in silence, pondering the unfairness of it all. She crossed her arms over the steering wheel and then leaned forward and cried. Drained and dried, Millie decided to go for a walk. She noticed a nature trail entrance to the Blue Hills Reservation and headed towards the woods. The movement forward pulled her from her internal pressures as the trail led past two lakes on either side, making the trail she was on appear to cross it like a bridge. The sun was even laying down a few beams through the crappy weather, brightening her view on things. She temporarily forgot the phone business as she moved up the trail. She passed a welcome placard and then crossing a two-lane road. Then the forest became more dense and shadowed as she walked. There were no other hikers about, and Millie could hear the beat of her own footfalls mixed with some birdsong. That's when she saw the white box lying not far from the trail in a bush. And it had a picture of a brand new iPhone X on the outside. Her heart leaped at the return to issue at hand. It was like a divine being was poking her right in the face, and that hurt more than anything. She stopped in the trail and stood there looking at this invader of nature. Laughing out loud, Millie thought, some lucky bitch just decided to unbox right here. The box still had its plastic wrapper with promotional stickers on it. Her heart leapt again, this time realising that this iPhone X box hadn't been opened yet. No way, impossible. Ridiculous. Stuff like this just doesn't happen, it only happens in the movies. Millie stepped into the forest just a bit and looked closer. Yes, an unopened iPhone X box just sitting in the woods. She looked around for a possible owner. Millie waited for a moment, waiting for someone to pop up, wondering what she was doing eyeballing their phone. Oh yes, Millie waited for a couple of very long minutes. Nothing. So she reached down and picked up the packaging. It truly hadn't been opened and it had just the right weight to it. This can't be happening, raced through Millie's mind as she turned it over in her hands. Oh yes! Using her fingernail, she split the plastic at the lid, opened the box and slid out the insert, revealing a perfectly wrapped iPhone X. Looking around herself again, there was no one around. No person running up to her to say, "Hey, excuse me, that's mine." She waited, breathing heavily. The excitement was too much. "Yes, get in there," she said. On the day of her test, Millie was really nervous. Her stomach cramped and she felt like vomiting her bagel and coffee from the cafeteria. She approached the test monitor who requested her phone. Here we go, she thought. As long as they didn't make her turn off the power for her cell phone, this was going to work. The monitor stuck a sticker on her newfound iPhone X and gave her a little ticket with a matching number. She didn't turn it off, she got away with it. This is going to work. Millie could feel the little wireless bud in her left ear. It would be her saving grace. All she had to do is tap the thing repeatedly until she came across the note she needed. Millie was smart. She took a seat near the back where the lights weren't as bright, but not all the way to avoid suspicion. Soon a TA came by handing the 2-sheet test out to everyone in the row. Millie looked down and started reading the questions. They sounded familiar, but as with everyone who has never studied enough, she just didn't know the answers. Tap, tap, tap. Millie listened to her audio notes, scrolling through each one as advertised. Finally, she came upon a note that answered question 1. Perfect. She scribbled down the answer and smiled. I'm gonna ace this, she thought to herself. The second question was answered just as quickly. Occasionally, she would scratch her head to make her motions more believable. It was working. No one was paying her any attention. Halfway through the test, Millie's confidence in her tech solution to cheating was riding high. Her answers were complete and correct, and that's when she heard the sound. A low grumbling noise invaded her wireless earbud. She tried to ignore it, but it only got louder. Out of Millie's peripheral visions, she saw bare feet. At first it didn't register, but then she realised that the feet were white with splotchy red spots on them. As her eyes moved to her classmate next to her, she saw that the rot on the feet went up the leg too. The noise was getting louder as she turned her face to look. Her classmate wasn't the same person who had sat next to her a few seats away just half an hour ago. This woman's clothes were dirty, her arms slack against her body, her face was white and her hair was matted with blood, dirt and leaves. The woman slowly turned her face towards Millie with a low grumbling crunching sound. With a white film covering both corneas and with dried blood collecting around her nose, this woman was clearly dead. Millie's eyes bulged. The woman's cut lips opened and a sound came over Millie's wireless earbud. Help me! Sounding like a boot dragged over gravel. Help me! Millie closed her eyes and turned her head back forward. I'm not seeing this, there's something wrong with me. She tapped the little button in her ear and another note started. Millie attempted to dismiss what she just saw sitting next to her. She wasn't going to look again until she realised that another set of bare feet, this time from the right side. Millie turned and looked at her other student neighbour to the right. Sitting there the same way, the same dead woman with the glazed eyes and bloody face. The dead woman's head slowly rotated towards her, and Millie heard her gravelly voice once again. Help me! Millie closed her eyes again and shook her head as if to clear some unseen tic, some malfunction inside her brain. A chill spread across her shoulders and then up the nape of her neck. Looking up from her paper, Millie scanned the room. Every single student in the room now looked identical. Every student was now this single very dead woman. Then, as if directed by some unseen force, every head turned slowly towards Millie. In her wireless earbud, every grinding voice came together in one guttural utterance. Help me! Millie freaked out and left her seat, her test lying on the fold-out table. Millie had to brush by half a dozen dead women, all identical, to get to the main aisle and up towards the back of the auditorium. She fumbled through the phone box until she found her number. The test monitor who manned the phone box before was now the dead woman, simply standing next to the box, in her stained and torn dress and cracked lips, slowly moving. Help me! Millie grabbed her new phone and bolted from the room, and once in her car, Millie thought she might be past the terror. She removed the bud from her ear and threw it on the seat next to her, and all she could hear was her own hyperventilation inside the car. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Looking out the front windscreen, the dead woman stood about 40 feet away, staring at her with those dull cotton eyes. This isn't over. Her mind raced. Thoughts of having to see this dead woman replacing everyone in the world for eternity scared her senseless. The phone. Clearly she stole this woman's phone. Maybe if she returned it. Millie decided and started her car. She backed up too quickly and almost hit the same dead woman, who was this time standing in the middle of the parking lot. Millie stared at the dead woman. Oh my God, yes, it's the same woman. Millie stepped on the gas and sped away. Millie raced through town, headed towards the St. Moritz Park area in Quincy. I'll return to the same spot and chuck this phone right back where I found it, she thought. And then as she drove, she noticed the dead woman standing on the side of the road, watching her. Her lips moving just below the crusted blood on her face and nose. Oh yeah, Millie knew exactly what she was saying. Help me! How can I help her? Any time Millie thought she was in the clear, that someone random just might be themselves, like a random driver of another car or someone on the street. Millie was met with the same visage. Everyone was the dead woman. Finally, Millie squealed into the sheer Memorial Rink parking lot, grabbed the cell phone and ran for the Skyline Trail ahead. Running as fast as she could, Millie made her way up the trail between the two ponds and up a ways, looking for the same area that she found the phone. Millie could feel her heart pounding because of the exertion, but also from the terror of seeing this corpse over and over again. As she came around the bend and just behind some bushes, she saw something pink. That's not natural, she thought as she carefully approached. The plastic wrap from the phone she found still lay where she discarded it. This is the place. Her eyes still on the pink item. Millie moved into the bush. It was a small weathered handbag. Then further on, she saw her. The dead woman lay face first in dark hardened mud. The hair colour, the dress, and then the bare feet with the red spots and splotches confirmed it. Without hesitation, Millie broke down and wailed as if she had found a lost relative dead on the floor. The tears flowed and she cried aloud, hitched breath, heaving shoulders, everything came out. Oh, the tension and the fear poured out like the river of her tears, and once she calmed down, she wiped her tears and snotty nose and used the dead woman's new iPhone to call the police. Instead of staring at the woman's body, she just stared at the pink purse for what seemed like hours until the police came running up the trail. Millie was so relieved to see people again. A strong white male police officer with his aviator sunglasses. The black policewoman who came to her side to relieve her and get the full story. Millie's act of finding the woman and calling the police had broken her hellish experience. For the first time in a while, Millie discovered that she had done exactly the right thing. The one thing she should have done in the first place, but she was too selfish and self-serving to figure it out. Giving that phone over to the police was ever so easy. The one thing she would never open her mouth to utter to the police was that she had seen the terror that embraced her, the fear that drove her to return to this place and find the dead woman. After Millie was allowed to leave the scene, she made her way to her car. Once inside, the tears started again, this time from relief. As she exited onto Willard Street, she saw a woman with a pretty dress and no shoes walking normally on the sidewalk. The woman was smiling. The woman waved at Millie and disappeared around some trees on the corner. Millie didn't look twice.